Mother, man.
Spreading faster than a case of the clap in a trailer court. Able to shatter eardrums within a 666-mile radius. A podcast more brutal than all the rest. It's Murder Metal Mayhem! All right, we have the privilege of doing this interview with Teresa Lancaster today. She's an attorney and the author of the book Safe in Socks, the real story of the murder of a nun and the priest's sexual abuse, brought up in the Emmy-nominated Netflix series The Keepers. It's really a pleasure to talk to you. That Netflix series was probably my anointment into the true crime docuseries, but it's a sad story, but very, very compelling, and I'm glad that you're able to come on with me and talk about this.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
How's the weather over there in Maryland where you are?
It's a little bit chilly.
Yeah.
We had a good clear day.
Yeah, same here in Illinois. You could definitely tell it's fall out, that's for sure.
Yes.
All right. Well, some of our listeners may not have seen The Keepers, and so I thought maybe if you could give us kind of a little overview of that and your involvement in it, because you're in there quite a bit.
Yeah. The Keepers is a 7-part docuseries that explores the mysterious murder of Sister Catherine Sesnick and Joyce Malachy. Sister Sesnick was an English teacher at Keough when I attended there, and she was loved by all the students. And she actually found out through one of the students that Father Maskell, the counselor at Keough, was sexually abusing her. And when Sister Kathy found out, she told that student that she was going to get to the bottom of it. And then the next thing we knew, she was dead. She was missing for a while, and then they found her in a wooded area. So it talks about that. And my involvement was, I was contacted by the two ladies that started an investigation into the death of Sister Kathy, Gemma Hoskins and Abby Fitzgerald. And they were on Facebook, and they were determined to get Father Maskell. And I started to talk to them, and I agreed, to talk. And as we proceeded in uncovering more information, the makers of The Keepers approached me and asked me if I would mind answering questions on camera for a documentary. And I really didn't know what I was getting into at first. I didn't mind talking about what happened, and
Right.
It turned into like years, 3-4 years. They would
Really?
filming for The Keepers and talk about different things that happened. And they put it together with all the other involved, and did a remarkable job, I think.
Yeah, they really did. I'll tell you, though, I would not want Gemma mad or looking for me, because she was just determined. I mean, what a personality. I just showed in the series how passionate she was. And Abby was too, but Gemma definitely really tough.
Yeah.
So
Abby's a great researcher, and they call Gemma the Nancy Drew of the... But she's very active still, and with podcasts and other things that she's still trying to get to the bottom of it.
That's great. That's good. I did read something about her involvement with some podcasts. Now, this subject is absolutely terrible, and of course, you and the other ladies that come forward were incredibly brave to do it. I'm sure that there were some that maybe were not wanting to be involved for a variety of reasons. Was that an issue with some of the ladies?
Yeah, there was several victims. that came to me, and we talked about things, and some of them worried about their family. There's a lot
Right.
of issues with families just can't cope with you coming forward. And honestly, if my mom was still alive, I don't think I would have come forward.
Yeah, I
It's
think I read something where you said
yeah,
you didn't even come forward until she had passed because you didn't
right.
knew how her faith would really be. I'm sure would be a trouble to
Yeah,
hear something like that.
yeah. And so there were a number of women that did not come forward.
Okay. Yeah, I figured there would have had to have been. Now,
Yeah.
I think what makes this case different is, and I fell prey to this as well, but most people assume that the priest sexual abuse cases would involve boys, but as your story shows, it happened to a lot of young girls too. And what are your thoughts on that?
Talked to several people, and researchers have found that many people thought it was mostly boys because that's what you saw in the headlines, the altar.
Right.
But the priest had more access to the boys. That was the consensus among the researchers. As
Okay.
yeah, but
Yeah.
pedophile, they typically go for either sex, I believe, as long as it's a child, and
Wow.
I'd like to take the opportunity to say it's not a homosexuality problem. A homosexual does not prey on young children. It's definitely a sick mind of a pedophile that does this.
Yeah, that's a good point to bring up because I think sometimes people have that false notion that that's what's going on there.
Mhm.
Now, in line with that, was there a lot of negative backlash that you guys found, whether it be in the church community or your local community there where the school is or was? Did you see that?
Well, I was pleasantly surprised at how well the Keepers was received. I was scared when it came up to almost the day of the release. I was actually terrified. I was because in the case, the Doe Road case back in '95, when I sued the church and Father Maskell, I got hate mail and threats. And of course, I didn't use my real name, but some people find you
Yeah,
anyway.
you were Jane Roe in the case.
Jane
Yeah.
Roe, yeah. And I was scared. But when it happened, I just got hundreds of messages thanking me, and people coming forward and telling their stories. And I do think the Me Too movement helped out as well.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, it's got to be tough to come forward with something like that. And
Yeah,
especially, with the religious side of this, it really makes it
yeah,
that much more complicated, because it's a violation of what you're there for, it's
right,
just terrible, really,
right.
especially at a vulnerable age like that. Now, despite all that you went through at Keough, you had the amazing determination to become a lawyer. I'd love to know a little bit more about that. I did, of course, read about it in the book, but I bet our listeners would love to know how somebody overcomes that sort of thing.
Well, as a young child, I always wanted to be a lawyer like my dad. I always looked up to my dad, and I was lost after Keough. And gradually, as I was able to come to terms with what happened, I was able to focus on my goals. I had my children very young in life, and as they grew, I started going back to school and broadening my horizons. So I thought, well, let's go for it. No time like the present.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. My dad and I always joked that we missed our calling becoming attorneys, and I thought, my gosh, I don't know if I could handle that much school. I got to hand it to you. That's impressive, especially as you get older. It's harder to
Yeah,
do it.
yeah, it was. But we had a study group, and I went to the night law school, and we got together, and everyone in my group passed the bar on the first try, but we didn't
That's awesome.
the younger people were partying and everything, and I can't risk it because there won't be a third chance, you know.
Sure, right. That's awesome, though. That is really, really cool.
Mm.
Now, I think it is just unbelievably sick the way the church handled this whole thing. Like you said, you had to wind up, going through a lawsuit. Has anything changed in more recent times with cases like this, with all the attention this and the other scandals have brought forth?
Sadly, no. I found
Wow.
it's all about the money in the church. It is a sad situation, but uh, like I'm trying to change the statute of limitations law, which would give victims their day in court. And every year I go to Annapolis and fight the law, and the church lobbyists are there. The church literally spends thousands of dollars on lobbyists to keep the archaic law in place.
Yeah, it's 7 years, isn't it?
It is,
That's
and
terrible.
it just they won't progress, and also they won't release documents. They won't transparency. I keep asking for bishop accountability, transparency, and they're not there, nowhere near.
Wow. Yeah, that's terrible because there shouldn't be, especially that short of a statute of limitations on something like that, because some of these girls, I'm sure, repress that stuff and it doesn't even come up until, much later on, maybe.
Yeah, they say the typical age for someone to come forward, be it male or female, is in their early 50s. And
Wow.
some don't even do that. So, what are you going to do?
Yeah. Yeah, that's tough. Now, what made you decide to write the book, Safe in Socks? And can you tell our listeners how you came up with that title? Because it's definitely unique.
Yeah, I've wanted to write a book since this happened to me. I always wanted to tell the world what really happened. And after the filming of The Keepers, I kind of got that fire lit in me again, and I decided to get serious about it. I found the cover was because when Maskell would abuse me, the only article of clothing he'd let me keep on was my socks. I know it might sound strange, but through all kinds of perverted abuse, I tried to focus on my socks. It was the only thing that would keep me grounded and gave me a small degree of comfort while things were going on.
Yeah, that's awful. That's absolutely awful. As a person that's written books myself, I know it's not an easy thing to do, especially when you've got, children and a career and life going on. It probably took a while for you to put it all together.
Yeah, it did. It did. I started years ago with what they call shoebox notes, where I'd have shoe boxes and different things in each box. And in my case, I even had letters from Father Maskell to the doctors where he would send me to, and them discussing my health. It was just outrageous. So I wanted to include a lot in the book, but I didn't want the book, to be, real long and dragged out.
No, I thought it was well done. And I did see today, I think it was on Facebook, that Jane Doe has a book coming out. So,
Yes, she does. She and I'm just so happy for her. Her
yeah.
I think is going to be like a self-help type of thing where she shares how she got through her ordeal. I think all survivors approach it differently.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure it's a personal situation. And I'm glad, yeah, that she was able to put it all down and probably will feel better having gotten that word out there. Now, I advanced ordered your book as soon as I saw that you were doing it. It's very, very well done. I did like, how you added, the pictures of you as a little kid and some of that stuff. I think makes
Yeah.
it more personal, makes it obviously personal to you as compared to what you see on the Keepers.
Right, right.
Now, what do you think I mean, when I hear these kind of stories about somebody like Father Maskell and the others that were involved too, because it wasn't just him, that
Yeah.
they moved these guys around to different churches, and they never actually see any sort of punishment. And I know you said with the lawsuits and stuff, it's still the same with the church, but has it gotten any better with the way they take care of these priests that do this sort of thing?
Not really. Nothing's really changed. The Archdiocese of Baltimore has a list of credibly accused priests that they agree have been credibly accused. It's 149 names, and only a handful of them were ever criminally charged. And I just was reading earlier today about a defrocked pedophile priest, Daniel McCormick. He was released from state custody in Chicago last month. He was accused of molesting at least 25 boys,
Oh
and
my gosh.
2 years in prison, and the rest of the time in a state-run mental facility. And they let him out last month. And
Wow.
I mean, the church um, just doesn't take accountability. Now, there's a site called the Bishop Accountability site online, lists pedophile priests, and it's amazing. You can go there and see the numbers of these abusers, and oftentimes they're defrocked by the church, but that doesn't get rid of them. They end up moving into communities. They're not on a sex offenders list, and
Wow.
they could be living next to your family with children, and the church doesn't take responsibility at all.
And is it just a money thing that they don't want that liability and those lawsuits? Is that part of it, and maybe the stigma of it all?
I think it is the money thing personally. I've talked to a lot of people, and uh, they say that they want to help the survivors, but they don't. They don't. It's just a sleight of hand, really.
Wow. Yeah, that's unbelievable. I mean, that when I watched The Keepers, I wanted to jump through the screen, I mean, I was so
Yeah.
angry. And I
Mhm.
I kept watching it and hoping that maybe against hope that he would actually, pay for what he did. And he winds up, he died in like a nursing home, right? In an older age.
He was in his 60s
Oh,
when,
okay. I thought he was older than that.
and he had a stroke. They say there's speculation as to what really happened to
Oh,
Pascal. I mean, people jump on just about anything. I
oh,
don't,
sure.
but I heard it was a stroke, and he died in a nursing home. I can't recall the name, but it was
Right.
by the church.
Wow. Yeah, it's just unbelievable to see that kind of thing. Now, what would you, if you were, a parent of today with school age children, would you send them to Catholic school?
Absolutely not. No way. Because it hasn't changed. I mean, you can't watch them 24/7. And I have worked with grown men who were raped as altar boys in the sacristy. And
Hmm.
I just, they find a way. And then today with phones, the pictures you can send, and I just would be afraid. I don't trust them at all.
Yeah, my dad went to Catholic high school in New York City, and he always talked about the abuse, physical, like punching abuse from the brothers
Yeah.
and the monks, that he
Mhm.
refused to send me or my sister to Catholic school because of that, because his terrible experience, not in a sexual way, but in physical beatings. I mean, really brutal stuff. Talked
Yeah.
about how they sat the kids in order of their class rank. So if you were the kid in the last seat, I mean, talk about feeling awful. So
Yeah. Oh God.
they
Yeah.
did that
Yeah.
kind of thing. He said just really, really awful. So, and then, yours takes it obviously to a level way beyond that. But that's how my parents were about the whole topic. How can listeners get a copy of your book? I'm going to link to this in the episode description if anybody's listening. But how do they do it? Amazon is how I got mine.
Yeah, it's Amazon's handling everything for me. It's
Okay.
there in print and also Kindle
Oh,
now.
great.
Get it on Kindle. But yeah, that's where you would go. I do have a public Facebook page called Safe in Socks, and that has links to the book too.
Okay, I'll make sure I link to that in the episode description. My last book, I just did an audio book of it, and
Oh,
it's a
wow.
tough haul. I mean, I wondered if you had the patience to sit there and do it because it was trying, but I got it done. But it was very difficult to meet the rigorous demands that Audible and some of those websites have. But they claim that half of people that consume books do it by audio. So I thought, wow, I'm like alienating half my audience by not having
Yes.
it.
I am
So
I
I
am
did
going
it.
to do that. I do want to do that. I have been taking a little bit of a breather because I do hear how much of it's a big job.
Yeah,
It's a
well,
big
you let me know. Honestly, if
yeah.
you're going to do it, I'd be happy to point you in some, maybe save you some of the grief that I went through.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Because it
sure.
took a while, but the book is a short story collection. It's like 10 and a half hours long on Audible,
Oh
but the
wow.
recording of it, takes a lot
A lot
more.
longer than that.
Every
Yeah,
little mistake, you got to fix it, and it can be
right.
tough. So dealing
Yeah.
with noises in the background and,
Mhm.
a car driving by real loud, those
That
things are
can
hard
ruin
to,
it.
they're hard to
Yeah,
work around sometimes.
yeah.
So I can relate. But yeah, you let me know if you're going to do anything like that. Now, Teresa, thank you very much for taking the time to chat with me here on Murder Metal Mayhem. It was great to talk. And is there anything else that I didn't bring up that you wanted to point out? I know you are an advocate for those, out there with dealing with sexual abuse and things like that. Is there any website or anything you wanted to mention other than the ones you've already told us about?
To know that about 3 years ago, under Brian Frosh, they began an investigation of childhood sexual abuse within the Catholic Church. And that is an ongoing investigation. And survivors were given an update last month and assured that the investigation on that because I hear some things are happening there.
Okay. All right. Well, very good. Well,
In
thank.
hopes of, yeah, I hope something comes up.
Yeah, definitely. We'll see the episode description for links to buy Teresa's book and more on the Murder Metal Mayhem podcast. And Teresa, thank you again for doing this with me.
Thank you.
All
Take
right. Have a
care.
good night.
Mother, man.